So yesterday was Krishna Janamashtmi, and so because of that, there's a question arises, who is Krishna? And that is what we're going to talk about today. So there are a number of ways to answer that question, because those who know Krishna will be able to answer that very easily. But in the Western countries, sometimes it is very confusing, because there seems to be a whole array of divine beings and gods and goddesses and so on, and you'd be hard-pressed to know who is who and what is what. And I suppose in more modern times, let us say in the last century, there was a movement, ISKCON, that made the name and personality of Krishna, hence the name Krishna consciousness, more widely spread in Western countries. So what is the view? The shortened version is that Krishna is seen to be God in a particular form. But when you examine this question, you can look at it from a historical point of view, you can look at it from a philosophical point of view, a mystical point of view, you can look at it from a mythological point of view, and you can look at all this combined if you like. So let us see if we can get some clarification on it. Firstly, we have to understand the Hindu way of looking at the universe as three evolutionary forces. We were discussing that a little bit before we broadcast here. And so we know that there is some kind of birth going on. We know that the birth carries on, there's a sustentation of life, and we know that there is death. That's one of the most sure common phenomena that we have observed. And no doubt this phenomena of birth, life, and death has mystified generations, all our ancestors, possibly back to the Stone Age, and who observed that this phenomenon was true. And it appears to be a great mystery, and it's not just with human beings, but every animal. Not only that, but within seasons, plants, birds, and so on. Everyone has this cycle, and so there is a natural tendency to extrapolate that to the whole of existence and say, perhaps wherever the boundaries of our universe are, because when we look into the sky and into space, we can't really see the end of it. You might think that there's a roof on it somewhere. Some ancient people may have thought like that. But then something is moving. And either something is moving around the earth, or the earth itself is moving. And there came to be an understanding eventually, no, it is the earth that is moving. And that was strong evidence for it. But it was very natural. When we look at how this universe was born, then and come to a conclusion that it has an origin beyond us, then naturally we accept that there is a creator somewhere. And naturally we see that that same being is sustaining things, keeping things moving, pervading everything. And naturally we also come to the conclusion that it is also dissolving it, destroying it. Now, unlike modern cosmology, we don't think that there is an end to the universe. It goes on and on. It's a cyclical model. Over eons and eons and eons of calculated time, it says that there is no creation, but projection. It is called srishti. Something is projected. And then something, srishti, is sustained. And then ultimately something then is withdrawn, is taken away. So this sustaining element we would call Vishnu. And Vishnu really is an epithet. Brahma is also an epithet. Shiva is also an epithet. What it means is, it gives us a description. When we say Brahma, it implies that there's an infinite projection somewhere. when we say Vishnu, we imply that that same being is entering into the universe and keeping it going. And we imply that the thing that is dissolving everything, Shiva, is actually auspicious. Why is it auspicious? Why is death auspicious? Because all of this, everything that has been described, is all really a kind of subject to unsteady forces. And that's what creates it all. That's what keeps it going. A struggle between moving and not moving. A struggle of opposites. A struggle of projecting and withdrawing, dissolving. And in between is that which is keeping it going, keeping it moving. I suppose we can also call this life. So these three, known as a trinity, are there. Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma. And Shiva was originally, in the Vedas, the Rudras, a collection of 11 Rudras. It is dominated by a force which is darkness, destruction, ignorance. And this game keeps going only because of it, because we cannot see the light. What do we mean by that? It's nothing to do with intellectual ignorance. It's everything to do with the fact that we don't really know. We're all agnostics. We don't really know what is the foundation of something. We don't know where it came from. It's like watching a movie. We never came at the beginning. We only know a little bit about the plot, and no one's staying till the end. And so what's keeping it going, what's in between, that we have to try and figure out. And we have the advantage of understanding one important thing. Whatever is there is like a juggler juggling balls. You know, imagine a wall, and all of a sudden a red ball comes, then a blue ball, then some other ball comes. So one by one they come up, but the juggler is not visible. All we know is balls being thrown in the air. In a kind of sequence, sometimes in random, sometimes sequence, but certainly different colors, with different characters. So now when we look at our own cyclical life, we can see the same kind of arrangement. We're sitting here, hopefully awake for the time being. And so there's a waking state. And in that waking state, we have an identity. And that identity is posited, is positioned against various events. People and places and events are there. We can represent it as a sun, if you like. The earthly life or the daily life, the life of the daytime is there. But soon that then collapses, closes down. As soon as we close the eyes, other inner eyes open, and we start dancing and performing and playing in a realm which would not necessarily be acceptable in a waking state. In a waking state, we can live, let's say, maximum for 100 years, God forbid. But in a dream state, we can live for 1,000 years. We can have a job as an accountant or something like that, or a computer technologist. But in a dream world, we can be a king with a queen in a palace and have gardens and servants and horses and unlimited grounds and all the rest of it, and jewelry and so on, all of those kinds of things. Carl Jung was quite specific about the symbolism of dreams. He understood that different classifications of dreams are there. And if you're a worried person, anxious person, then you'll be in the midst of repetitive dreams, repeating that anxiety, or if you have problems, there'll be problem-solving dreams, or there'll be wish-fulfilling dreams are there, or routine dreams will be there. Different classifications of dreams, including a dream which is a premonition dream also, that can also be there. Anyway, he studied it quite well and showed evidence for this theory with his method of dream interpretation. But you see, that world doesn't last long either. Now, in that world and in the waking world, there is time and there is space. But then all of a sudden, without presenting our passport, we glide across the border into an amorphous state, a potentially creative state where there is a blank, and all we know is there's a peace. And we don't know how long it lasts because there's no time there and there's no space there. There's no causation there. There's no function there. But we are aware that there's a peace. And this state of peace can also be induced by anesthesia. But there is some entity that is watching all the time, that is observing, and is able to later recall, I had a peaceful sleep. And so judged from the waking state, all the other states are meaningless, have no importance, value, a big mistake. But you see, from a dream point of view, the dream is real, with real time and real events. If it wasn't like that, and we dream of a lion attacking us, then why do we re-enter the waking state shaking? It was real at the time. All the criteria that endorses a reality for the waking state is there in the dream state also. And in the deep sleep state, all of that is gone. When memory comes back, it comes into dream again. We repeat this cycle maybe 4 or 5 times a night, making a dissension into a blank and coming back again. Now, in meditation, we can do that deliberately by constructing an imaginative set of scenic events, inspiring events, joyful events, accompanied by a sense of devoutness. We can lead our attention gradually inwards into a state of poise, a creative space, where thoughts are coming from and arising. And then there is the state of the observer itself. And when we are immersed in that, of course, when even that one thought goes, then time is gone, space is gone, all the states are gone, the I is gone, there's no thought, no mind. That's that entity in a universal sense we call Brahman. In an individual sense we call as Atman. Simply the immortal self, the infinite invisible that is within us. So when we talk about the life of Krishna, we can look at it from a relative point of view, the relativity of perception, and deal with different angles. But if our one purpose of life is quite solid, is to realize what is the truth within, then it behoves us to go along the line of inquiry, which helps us the most in this. And there we have to probably resort to 2 things. First of all, the history, mythology, which tells us events in Krishna's life and where it comes from. And where it comes from is Vishnu, that aspect which is Vishnu. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, it tells us, yada yada hi dharmasya, it goes like that. From age to age, I am born from age to age, wherever there's a decline of harmony, what is called adharma, wherever adharma exists, where there's a decline of dharma, then I come to make the adjustment. A kind of cosmic balancing power comes from age to age, traditionally in the Hindu system, theological system. Then it becomes, Krishna would have been the 8th, some say the 9th incarnation of Vishnu. And so we can add a few others to that, but there's also Kalki who comes at the end of an age and so on. We can take it like that, but that's just a kind of theological counting position. From age to age means it can happen countless times. Wherever there's a decline, it can happen. Not just 10, 11, 12 times. So this idea of incarnation, this idea of avatara, comes from Vaishnavite idea that Vishnu, sustaining the world and loving the world as it is, in a kind of sense of separation, and yet the world being a manifestation of that Vishnu itself. The game continues by the Lord himself involving himself and playing the game, playing the sport. And we find this philosophical concept of sport very, very pragmatic, very helpful, because it means that whatever struggle we have in life, whatever day-to-day issues and so-called difficulties we have, are simply obstacles in the way of a divine game of hurdling. If you're selected for the Olympic sport of hurdling and you agree to take part in it on one condition, that all the hurdles get removed, then there's not much of a sport. So let there be hurdles. Somebody who has that sporting, adventurous spirit will play a game of life. And thought itself and meditation itself will be a guiding game of thought. Not just observing the thought and the thought current going through, but also taking it up and canalizing it, channeling it in such a way that it's a delightful sport, and doing that not just in meditation, but doing that whenever a thought arises. That would be a big task, because if you were to monitor all the random thoughts that are going through the mental field at any given moment, you'd be in the thousands and millions and maybe billions. Should you trace every thought? Well, at least from time to time, using the facility or the faculty of time itself, which can be broken down into separate units, we can see at any given moment what condition the mental field is. And sometimes it is in a dull mood, a lazy mood. We say that tamas is ruling. And then sometimes we feel completely energetic. The Bhagavad Gita in the 17th chapter gives us a wonderful, wonderful idea of these three evolutionary forces applied in different ways. For example, we know that in the matter of faith, in the matter even of diet, in the matter of austerity, it is all classified into these three binding forces we call gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. It's a very fundamental thing to know. And so, this one being which is manifesting in these three functional ways, these modes. Now, this kind of trinity is a form of modalism, I suppose. And so it's not like the Christian Trinity, because the Christian Trinity is not modalism. In fact, modalism in Christianity is a heresy. And you see, if you take St. Patrick in our own country here, explaining this Trinity with the shamrock, 3 leaves from one stem, it is in fact a variety of modalism. But I can't see how you get away from it. So I think the 3 persons in the one is exactly the same, in the sense that there is a creator, the father of the universe, and that creator, Brahma in Hinduism, is also called father or the lord of all creatures, Prajapati. So there's an author there, a creator there. And the power of the creation really is from a harmonizing divine energy. And so that energy, we come out as modern day Saraswati, it comes out as Vak, word. And then we can leap to John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word. It all ties in together. And why should that be there? Well, I suppose you can go back to Neoplatonism and Plotinus and his influence from Persia and India and so on, where this idea of logos or word came to be. And so this word manifests. And how do we keep it going? It's manifested from this power of rajas. And this rajas, a projection. Hence this root bra, projecting. So things are projected. And then ultimately things are withdrawn. And why should we be suspicious for things to be withdrawn? Is because the withdrawal is withdrawal of all our ignorance. All our ignorance has gone. And Shiva, therefore, the Lord of yogis, is the one that's doing that. But what has that got to do with Krishna? So let us look at the etymology of Krishna. Krishna means dark. And dark, sometimes you can interpret as dark blue, for example. That's why in the iconography, Krishna has a blue skin. So it's dark. That means it implies infinity, complete infinity. And we see that the form of Krishna is one of the most popular and beloved forms in Hinduism, among Hindu followers. Why? Well, because naturally, all the tales that you learn about Krishna and his demeanor and the fact his youthfulness and his expression of love, it is all love. It is all love. It is all playfulness. It is everything that we aspire for. It is everything that we like. But is it a reality? Well, it is one side of reality. Because as we know, life is not all smooth sailing. And yet, yes, looking at Krishna, it pacifies the mind completely. The only thing we know about Krishna really mainly is largely from the Mahabharata, and of which, of course, we find the synthesis of it in the celestial song, Bhagavad Gita. And we know it from the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam also seemingly authored by Vyasa. So there we have in the 10th book, we have the whole life of Krishna laid out. Now, he doesn't lay it out from the end, naturally. We have to begin at the beginning. So how Krishna was born, and all of you are probably familiar with the story, so I'm not going to go through the story in detail. There's a beautiful summary of it contained in Sister Nivedita's book, Cradle Tales of Hinduism. And there the whole Krishna cycle is laid out. So we know that it began with Krishna's parents, of course, before Krishna. He was the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. Now Vasudeva, we have to say, was formerly definitely identified as a deity. It was there, and the Greeks who came to India acknowledged it, and ambassadors and so on and so forth, and they had it on coins and what have you. So Vasudeva. But that's all history. But when we see Vasu is dwelling. So the dwelling of the Lord, or the space wherever the Lord dwells. Now the space wherever the Lord dwells must surely be Vishnu, because Vishnu pervades everywhere. And if we want to apply creative imagination, as we should, to delight the soul, when we look at the blue sky, we should surely see Vishnu's beaming skin. I put out a thought, you see. You ask a child, so look at the blue sky, what do you see? Oh, it must be the expansive, infinite skin of the Lord. If you ask a scientist, they say, these are short wavelengths in the short wavelengths from the spectrum, and they hit the retina. They spoiled the whole magic of it. And so I put, well, I'd rather have the child's story. Because when you look at that and fill the mind all the time, not just with positives, but with beauty, with appreciation, with love, with thankfulness, with adoration, something that elevates the soul. We cultivate that, but we only do it on set occasions. On set occasions, we may go to a theater or to an artistic presentation or an art gallery or something like that, and the whole spirit gets elevated. You go to a dance performance or something like that, or a drama, and the whole spirit gets elevated if it's inspiring. Listening to a concert, a piece of music, live, not recorded. where you hear the instrument as in a crystal clear way and identify the feeling of the author of the composer. So all of this elevates the soul. Why should we be miserable, therefore? There's no reason for it. At any moment in time, we can delve deeply into the unconscious mind and bring out a concert, bring out a flower, bring out a beautiful scenery, bring out mountains and seas, bring out the whole universe and highlight it, tune it up so that it becomes extremely vivid to all the senses, and trace it then back to the divine. So Krishna was not born in ideal circumstances because Kamsa was a tyrant, and he got some kind of inspired message which said, actually, the eighth child that you have will be your end. And so immediately his love, see how human relations change, his love for his dear friend Vasudeva and his charming sister Devaki immediately turned because he was under threat. Even that much of a story can teach us a lesson. Firstly, how consistent are we in our relations with others? And we all have an inner tyrant within us that says, I will cling on to my own life and make it paramount above everything else. You may say, oh, so-and-so is such a generous person. Well, let us test it out. In a life-threatening situation, how willing will you be to surrender the other person's life and you survive, or the other way around? There are heroic people who would do that. But the common reaction will be, let me preserve my own life at all costs. So when we talk about love, mainly we're talking about love of ourselves, not love of the other. That's a rare thing. That takes a certain shift in our way, in our vision, and the way we are looking at things and people. And what we are told is, from our own logical experience, our own mystical experience, and that of scriptures, that says we have to only do one thing as a practice. We have to see that divine in everyone. And I go further and say, feel it. Feel it in everyone. Feel it in all objects, in all people, in all places, on all events, in all things that move, in all things that don't move, in the inert, in the inanimate, in the animate. And that divinity is manifest more in the animate, there's no doubt. But it's manifest in peculiar ways everywhere, in ways which we don't see also. Only fairly recently in man's history have we been able to see the minutiae through the electron microscope. Otherwise it was hidden to us. Even germs are revealed through the microscope. It was only something recently observed. So we are now looking at the very, very minutiae of our experience that looks nothing like what you see on a day-to-day life and a day-to-day existence. What looks like a chair, what looks like a table, what looks like a grass, what looks like a tree. None of these really, in their minute form, look like this at all. In fact, we know that it is a combination of divine waves. We call these tanmatras. And these waves are glittering, oscillating waves that combine and recombine. And there seems to be a kind of border below which we say this is reality. And that becomes the tables and the chairs and the you and the me and the teenagers and so on. All of that. So how to get back to see things as they are? We can't do it through a telescope. We can't do it through the microscope. We have to do it through the instrumentation of the mind itself. And so Krishna teaches us how. Earlier on we did a meditation, and I took the meditation from the Bhagavatam. There Krishna gives very specific, in answer to his question about meditation from Uddhava, his disciple, Krishna is saying very, very specifically a kind of meditation, all to do with devotion. But at the end, light merging with light is how it's described. What a beautiful way of thinking. Cultivating this kind of process is necessary for us. So, Krishna's father and mother were confined, and every child that they had was taken and dashed to pieces by the cruel tyrant. And we find such a similar story to that of Herod in Christianity and the birth of Jesus and so on. We don't know if anybody borrowed from anybody else, but we leave it at that. And ultimately, miraculously, the last two children were saved, but it wasn't known. It was thought that they were also dispatched. And then miraculous thing happened where Vasudeva managed to take the newly born Krishna across the river, the Yamuna, and take it to a chieftain family and so on, where he grows up. So there's an episode like that. And Krishna is destined to kill Kamsa and to kill a dangerous serpent and many other adventures like this. But we see another aspect, another drama of Krishna's life. So we can divide Krishna's life into certain episodes. So that one episode will be the birth of Krishna. Open your eyes and see me born as your child. Carry me, Father, to the house of your good friend King Nanda in Gokula. This was the divine instruction given to his father. And his wife, the Queen Yashoda, that is the King Nanda's wife, has just now given birth to a daughter. You can exchange me. And so he managed to fulfill a designed thing. Now, all of these things don't begin on earth. They begin in so-called heaven. A tyrant is there. How to deal with that? In other words, dharma is being upset. From age to age, the cosmic balancing power comes, incarnates, and sorts out the problem, but does more than that, inspires us. So the greatest legacy of Krishna, apart from all of these stories, dancing with the shepherd boys and the shepherd children, those episodes, delightful episodes in Vrindavan. And when we talk about love of God, we have to read those episodes. This drunkenness, as it were, this blissful state of divine and divine dance. And we see how Brahma was testing him out. We see how Indra challenged him. All of these stories are there. But then you see, we come to, even in childhood, him revealing the whole universe through his mouth to Yashoda. And all of these stories will tell us something most profound. He allows himself to be bound. There's that episode we find in the Bhagavatam, and he's manifesting his divinity to Brahma. All of this is contained in this immense work, this Bhagavatam. But we can take a very short handbook summary volume of it. That will be useful for us. There's one that is in front of me. It is a very simple version, and it is translated by Swami Prabhavananda and published by Sri Ramakrishna Math in Chennai. Krishna and the shepherdesses. Swami Vivekananda tells us that this episode is so profound. Of the episode in the life of Sri Krishna recorded in this particular chapter, Swami Vivekananda has said, the most marvelous passage of his life, the most difficult to understand, which none ought to attempt to understand, until he has become perfectly chaste and pure. That most marvelous expansion of love, allegorized and expressed in that beautiful play at Vrindavan, which none can comprehend, but he who has become mad with and drunk deep of the cup of love. Somebody's here? Oh. Oh, okay. Who can conceive the throes of the love of the gopis, the shepherd girls, the very ideal of love, love that wants nothing, love that even does not care for heaven, love that does not care for anything in this world or in the world to come? If you want to learn about bhakti yoga or divine love, he's suggesting that is the passage you should read. He carries on. The historian who records this marvelous love of the gopis is one who was born pure, the eternal pure Sukha, who is the son of Vyasa. So long as there is selfishness in the heart, so long is love of God impossible. It is nothing but shopkeeping. Oh, for the one kiss of those lips, one who has been kissed by thee. His thirst for thee increases forever, all sorrows vanish, and he forgets love for everything else but for thee and thee alone. I forget first the love of gold and name and fame, and for this little trumpery world of ours. Then, only then, will you understand the love of the gopis, too holy to be attempted without giving up everything, too sacred to be conserved and conceived until the soul has become perfectly pure. And people with ideas of sex and of money and of fame bubbling up every minute in their hearts, daring to criticize or interpret the love of the gopis. That is the very essence, he says, of the Krishna incarnation. Even the Gita, the great philosophy itself, does not compare with that madness. For in the Gita, the disciple is taught slowly how to walk towards the goal. But there is the very ecstasy of enjoyment, the drunkenness of love, where disciples and teachers and teachings and books and even the ideas of fear and God and heaven, all these have become one. Everything else has been thrown away. What remains is the mad transport of love. In complete obliviousness to all else, the lover sees nothing in the world except that Krishna, and Krishna alone, for the face of every being has become a Krishna. And his own face looks like Krishna, and his own soul has become tinged with the Krishna color. That indeed was the great Krishna. So these are some thoughts on Krishna and who is Krishna. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, that is the highlight of Krishna's life. But in the Bhagavad Gita, we have the most profound philosophy and teaching of Krishna. And in fact, you can say, because every chapter is deemed to be an Upanishad and Yoga Shastra, so 18 chapters are there. And you'll find the whole of spiritual teaching in that one book. Only 18 chapters. I was part of the construction of the curriculum for the junior schools in terms of their religious education. And for the first time, a few years ago, they expanded the education to include other religions. The major religions were there. And then I persuaded them. I said, but in teaching Hinduism, you should really get them to study the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, if we get that to study, then we have to also do this and that and the other, So, yeah, but it's the shortest of all the scriptures and the most profound and universally applicable. Why don't you do that? And eventually they were persuaded to do that. So I'm very pleased. I have to follow up and see if they're actually doing it. But anyway, that is so. So it is the most profound, it's the longest philosophical poem in the world. And there you'll find all the teachings there. Now, do these teachings get lost? They do. And so in Krishna's life, there must have been many, many diverse things going on, many diverse opinions, many schools of thought. Even the whole observation from which carried on even till Buddha's time, and even today we find people torturing their bodies, for example. And Krishna says, no, this is Tamasik kind of austerity, and it is absolutely wrong and absolutely demonic, because what you're doing is you're torturing the very housing of the divine. Why would you want to do that? Going to extremes. Now this teaching is way before Buddhism. And so this teaching has to be revived by Buddha also. And the test of an enduring religion, one stream, one river flowing, that never changes in essence, Sanatana Dharma, will change in its Yuga Dharma from time to time. It'll change in its contemporary delivery from age to age. And every religion, to be meaningful, will have to make this adaptation and synchronization. So the old deities of the Vedas are nowhere to be seen. We still put them in our yajnas and so on, in our havans and so on, in our prayers. But actually, they are now condensed into these three evolutionary forces on a cosmological basis of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and put in as Vishnu, as Brahma, and as Shiva, as something that projects and hides and reveals. Now it's the same with us. What is all this teaching? What value has it? What value has the spiritual practice? What value has love of God? And all of these things. Well, it's because all we're doing is cleaning the mind. That's all we're doing. Producing cleansing activities, cleansing thoughts, so that every movement and vibration that we have as seeming individuals will serve to polish up the mind. And with the mind clarified, we then see what is at the bottom, as the Bhagavad Gita tells us, like an embryo that is hidden in the womb, like the fire that is hidden by smoke, like the cloud, like the sun that is hidden by the cloud. All of these kinds of things. We are living in an apparitional universe, and that veil will be lifted by following the life and teachings of all these great incarnations. The fact that Krishna has endured, let us say, some 5,000 years, is a testimony to the potency of his life and his example. Swami Vivekananda had asked his master once, what if Krishna doesn't exist? What if Rama doesn't exist? His reply was, what if Jesus didn't exist? His reply was, something must have been existing to last all these thousands and thousands of years. Some impact is there. And when you look at the sweetness of Krishna, it's easy to see how devotees are flock toward him. And the poet will say in one song, Bansuri is Krishna's flute. Let me be your flute so that I may have the touch of your sweet lips, and you may make your music through me. Make me an instrument. So there's a beautiful way of understanding the position of being prepared to be a divine instrument, releasing, letting go, surrendering, taking refuge in that being, and allowing pure love to flow. And it flows because the love is flowing toward us. Why else would we be sitting wherever you're sitting? Why else would you have a heartbeat? Why else would you have opportunities for growth and development? Why else would you have a life which is better in terms of its quality than maybe the vast majority of the rest of the world? Why would you be sitting interested in this whole idea of a vision of God and freedom? It is only because of divine grace. What we call divine grace is pure love flowing to you unconditionally, never going on strike, never asking for a wage increase, just doing it, digesting your food nicely, pumping your heart, inflating, deflating your lungs, and giving you the opportunity to see God as the flower, as the sky, as the person in front of you, as the air around you, as the animals around you, as the ups and downs in the game of life. If there are no downs, there's no game of life. Supposing you play rugby, as one of our devotees does, then there would be no point if there was no opposition players, no point if there was no goal, no point if there was no strategy, no skill. You just say, take the ball and put it in the goal. What kind of game is that? But do we take it as a game? So this is Krishna Lila. The whole of life is nothing more than Krishna Lila. And then the divine play showing us this consolidated gopis as Radha, coming out also theologically as the divine energy. This all developed over so many years and is very old, very ancient. Simple shepherd boy, simple shepherd. No doubt born in a royal household, royal family, but in a rural environment and doing nothing but playing. Now, where do we get our creativity? We get it from playing. When we take life according to strict laws, when we put ourselves into a straitjacket, we are restricting our sense of creativity. And creativity is our divine expression that comes out. So we all are creative thinkers, creative doers. We all have within us the capacity to express and contribute and serve with a generosity of spirit. And three things are stressed in the Bhagavad Gita: worship, charity, giving. These things are there, and austerity. These three things. We can examine those three things separately because it's really fully defined in the Bhagavad Gita. But so worship of the highest kind will be simply expressing the feeling of love that you have. That's all. And there we find this example in Krishna's life. These episodes we find. What is austerity? Austerity is strengthening the will so that the mind doesn't go here and there. So austerity is to do with the mind. Worship is to do with the heart. And then we have charity. Charity is to do with the hands and the heart, basically. Because charity is saying, let me give without asking or even thinking of a reward. It is absolutely authentic altruism. And so all of these things are there, updated in the messages of modern saints and modern leaders in spirituality. It is there in the message of Swami Vivekananda. It is there in his master's message. It is there reflected in the life and sayings of Holy Mother Sharda Devi. So with all of these, with these few words then on Krishna, I hope you have more of an understanding of who is Krishna, and that it stimulates you to research more deeply into his life as portrayed in the Bhagavatam and his episodes, and enjoy the company of Krishna through his birth, through his childhood, through his destruction of the evil forces, to his advice as a teacher, to ultimately his role in his clan, and ultimately the demise of that. And we know that Krishna died in 3102 BCE, and so some 5,000 years ago. And at that point, our Kali Yuga began. So, Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace be on all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Om